Hello, Southwest Florida homeowners and homebuyers. Welcome to the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast, your go-to source for navigating the vibrant real estate landscape of our beautiful region. I'm your host, Kevin Tremmel, a local real estate agent, leader, and investor here in Southwest Florida. On this podcast, we bring you insights from best in the business, top-notch real estate professionals, seasoned agents, and experts of everything from homeowners insurance to mortgages, maintenance, and repairs. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer or a seasoned homeowner, we've got you covered with tips, strategies, and valuable insights to make your journey in Southwest Florida's real estate market a breeze. Get ready to unlock the doors to successful home ownership. This is the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast, where we demystify the process, share insider knowledge, and ensure you're well equipped to make informed decisions. Let's dive in. Carlos is a top-notch realtor here in Southwest Florida. With 15 years of experience, he leads a team of very successful agents helping buyers and sellers. And Carlos specifically focuses on assisting sellers selling their properties for top dollar. Welcome to the show, Carlos.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course, man.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, Carlos, why don't we start? What's your real estate story? How did you get into this? And why did you get into this? And why have you been doing this for the last 15 years?
Gosh, so started in the business November of 2000. And, prior to that, I spent 2 years in the mortgage industry. So I experienced that real estate uptick of 2003 as a mortgage broker. And I saw things happen that were absolutely wild. I started doing that. And then I decided to get a little bit more complicated, get my real estate license after I went from the mortgage broker industry and went to sell homes for a builder that didn't require a license. And around the time, I did some decent amount of performance for the builder and gave me a lot of confidence to go out and get my general real estate license. So once I got that, I went into the business as a new licensee in November of 2000. And that's almost to the date, exactly when the market crashed.
Right.
So I was very lucky. I got into a brokerage with a broker that was highly motivated, saw that market as an opportunity, and I didn't know any better. So I looked at the business as normal around that time. I was given training, I was given tools, and I just worked hard.
Right.
But it was interesting because I was talking with a colleague today, given the real estate landscape today and how more inventory is coming on the market. Yeah. And we are having the same conversations we are having today are the same conversations we were having with sellers back in 2008, 9, 10, and 13 through 13, where there was a lot of doom and gloom, meaning that the conversations over the past, as a comparison, last 4 years, we've been talking to sellers, your homes are increasing in value.
Yeah.
And we've been spoiled the last couple of years. When I first started, it was all about sellers chasing the value of their property down and price reductions and being extremely aggressive. Down the street, a home sold for $500, and 2 months later, it was selling for $400.
Yeah.
So those conversations, we're having them now. And I have been very fortunate to have started. I'm reaping the benefits of having come into a market where it was really hard to do business in 2008 to now having all that experience in my background and having a point in time to reference with these conversations that I'm having with sellers to help them reach the conclusion about where they need to be positioned in the market in terms of price.
Right. And I just want to highlight, that's one of the many benefits of working with a realtor like yourself that's, very experienced, that you basically started your career at one of the craziest, not for the better, one of the craziest real estate downturns we've ever experienced. So you've been through this before, right?
100%. And the first listing I ever took was in Naples. And when I took that listing, the property came off the market as an expired listing, and it expired at a price of $550,000. When I went on that listing appointment, I didn't know any better. I had done a real estate comparative market analysis for that customer. And when I sat down and interviewed with this homeowner, the final price was $380,000. That was significant. And I remember her calling her husband and saying, "Hey, Jim, I've got an agent here that says our home is only worth $380,000. And his first reaction was, I told you that our home wasn't priced as that high. We're not in a market where we can get $500,000 for a home. And
Yeah.
the home sold fairly quickly within 10 days once they priced it at 380.
Yeah.
So those conversations, we're not quite there yet where values are coming down 60% from its value. I think we're going to see probably a 30% drop.
From here, like, so I was going to ask you about that. So you, just for everybody knowing, when Carlos got into real estate, I was in eighth grade. So I would just like to have your insight. You kind of compared 2008, 2009 to like the same conversations that we're having now with sellers. I would just like your insight because, you know, you were there when 809 happened. Do you see it getting as bad as it was 0809? I'm sure probably not,
No,
right?
I don't think so. I think the motivation behind selling a home today is completely different than when it was in 2008. We had, that was a subprime market where we had the unrealistic loans, adjustable rate mortgages, and just the banking industry loaning money irresponsibly. They were loaning, if you told the bank that you had good credit, that's all you needed. They didn't check. They didn't require skin in the game like a decent down payment or background check on your willingness to pay basically your credit, your willingness to pay back a loan.
Yeah.
They didn't do any of that. They just took your word for it, and they took a lot of chances. So that's not the environment we're in right now. I think the market today will settle. It definitely has to have a correction. And then inflation has a lot to do with it, with the Fed having raised their interest rates so much. So it was forced to stop.
Yeah.
Not it was a controlled environment, at least in my opinion. We're looking to get at least 2 or 3 more interest rate drops, which should settle things in terms of stopping the market to have so much of an influx in inventory. Right now, all 3 markets in our area, and I say it's 3 markets because we have 2 counties that we pound the pavement in, but it's really Naples, the Cape Coral area, and Fort Myers, right? And that would be including Lehigh. We're seeing these markets start to develop a consistent over 7 months of inventory right now.
Yeah, definitely.
And that puts it officially in a buyer's market.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah, everybody to know, generally speaking, everything under 6 months inventory supply, seller's market, if you're exactly around 6 months, you're pretty balanced. Everything over 6 months turns more into a buyer's market. And I would definitely agree with you on that we're definitely over the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, we're seeing that months of supply definitely tick up and we're shifting more into a buyer's market. And I think it's pretty evident when you look at like new construction, like what incentives these builders are giving, like all my buyer clients that I work with, my first stop is usually a builder just because you're getting rates in the 5s versus on the resale side, you're getting rates in the 7s, high 6s maybe. You're getting your closing costs paid. You're getting X dollars off the price of the home. You got the warranties, everything like that. So yeah, we're definitely shifting. Now, one thing I want to also ask, so you said in your opinion, you think it's going to be about a 30% price correction. Now, I mean, you probably believe we're already in that 30%, though. You're not like saying 30% from where we're at now, right? Because we've already seen like some pretty significant corrections in some areas of
Yeah, we're seeing it. We're seeing it. And here's the conversation I'll have with a seller today. Right now, you're in a position that your home is able to appraise for an ideal price.
Right.
Okay, because we have had sales that happened in January and February that were still at a premium price.
Right.
Okay, so March, April sales are going to start to decline. Okay, so right now, if an appraiser comes to your home after you've procured a contract, then you have right now the advantage that your home will appraise for anybody using financing for your home.
Right.
Okay, but in 3 more months, we're going to start to get these stragglers that are under contract today for lower prices. That when that time comes, when your home finally sells and you go through the motions with a person using financing, You close in 45 days, you're still going to have a track record of 120 days of sales where your appraisal is going to be okay. But this summer may be a little difficult because we're going to have sales past these 120 days that are going to be in a much lower price.
Yeah.
So there's urgency right now. People's equity is actively dwindling right now. So if anybody has their home on the market right now and they're dancing around a price reduction or adjusting to the market, they need to have a conversation with their agent at where their local market is actually heading.
Yeah.
Because in 2 or 3 months from today, they're not going to have a choice. Their home is just not going to appraise for the amount of money that they want to get for their home.
Right.
So they need to make adjustments now. There's those factors. At 7.2, I just looked just yesterday, it was 7.2 months of inventory. We're well beyond the threshold of it becoming a buyer's market. And the days on the market went from year to date last year, 5 days on the market to 58 days on the market. Don't take your agent's word for it. Have your agent pull up the data on your specific market as it relates to the category that their home fits in order to make a solid decision. Then marry that with your motivation, your true motivation to sell.
Yeah.
Right now, you can get plenty of money. If you bought your home in the last 3-4 years, you have an opportunity to come out of your home with some equity to move to the next opportunity.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate, just for everybody listening, this is not, even though we're kind of talking about corrections and buyers markets and like appraisals, I just want to reiterate, this is not 0809. Like Carlos already mentioned it. The big difference is that I think the stat is over 85%. It might even be more, but over 85% of mortgages these days active in the United States are fixed rate, right? They're not ARMs. As the Fed has increased these rates over the last couple months and years, people's payments on their mortgages have stayed relatively the same, factoring out insurance and taxes going up, obviously. So I think that is just important for everybody to know. It's vastly different. Also, we are sitting as a nation on more homeowner equity than ever. So the risk of someone, even with a price correction, price drop, the odds of someone being underwater on their mortgage is relatively low. So
most people don't have to sell. I had a seller come to me the other day, a custom past client whose home I sold for 200. I sold him a home for, I think it was like $200,000. Today it's worth close to 500. I mean, they're sitting with a lot of equity, but they want a little extra room, They want a little extra room.
It doesn't.
And, their family's grown and they still have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And my advice to them, unless you absolutely have to, unless you really have to be in dire need for your equity, sickness in the family, don't sell. Especially don't sell out of your 2.8% interest rate.
Yeah. If
I'd
you
love
really
to sell you a home and sell your home, that means a lot of transactions for me. But man, why would you ever consider selling out of that so that you can go get into a bigger home, bigger debt for 6.5-7% interest to add a bedroom? Think about adding an addition to your home before you do that,
right?
Because it's going to be significantly more expensive.
Or if you really want that new home or bigger, rent out your existing property. I see a lot of people do that. They're becoming mom and pop landlords. They're becoming first-time landlords, right? Like they don't want to get rid of the 2 point whatever rate.
I don't know if we will ever see interest rates be that low. And I'd love to see that happen because it puts a lot of people in great positions. But I don't know, that you have to look at how the banking industry works. For the first 7 years of your mortgage is when the bank actually collects the interest or, their profits on this loan. After that, most of your money starts going towards the principal. So they make the bulk of their money within the first 7 years.
Right.
But now they're looking at 23 years of having to carry your mortgage at a loss. Okay. So I don't know that with the experience that the banks are having now after 7 years, that they're going to want to carry that. So, what people don't understand is why the banks come back and ask you for a refi,
Yeah.
get a HELOC out,
Yeah.
and put you in a position where they can add another term on your loan where they can collect from you for the first 7 years, because they can't afford to carry your 2.8 mortgage or your 3.5% mortgage over the course of 30 years. They're going to lose.
Yeah. 100%. So
I have had the experience of some banks saying, we will pay off your mortgage and we'll discount it this much.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting what these banks are going through right now. I can only imagine, but let's shift gears a little bit. So we're talking about transitioning into a buyer's market. We've kind of addressed some seller concerns. You and your team also help a lot of buyers. So what are some kind of common mistakes you see home buyers make during the whole process?
You still see it today. You still see it today where people begin to shop before understanding how much money they have to work with.
Yep. Yep.
Your income has restrictions. This is the reason why in 2005 and 2003, people were getting into problems is, they didn't check your debt to income ratios.
Yep.
And then add a mortgage to that and see how much you qualify for. They didn't do any of that. We had a huge foreclosure market, in lieu of that type of behavior from the banking industry, just giving people money without asking. The banks no longer do that for you.
Right.
They don't allow you to go find a house first and then tell you how much you can afford.
Yeah.
It used to be that way, and it got us into a real estate recession. So right now, basically what I'm saying is that first thing you have to do before you start shopping is find yourself a good lender and get a letter of approval from the lender that's been in that industry, is gone through direct underwriting, meaning they have placed your entire scenario, meaning your credit and your ability to pay. So your willingness and ability to pay, match that with whatever bank conditions they have, and put you through a direct underwriting process and given you a letter that says he's been direct underwritten approval. He has a direct underwritten approval. We just need a house.
Yeah.
Okay. That says a lot for the seller that's been educated well by their listing agent. What means more? A letter of pre-approval that's just been produced by this online platform. Okay, you're approved.
Yeah.
And then, which holds a lot of weight when you go to make offers.
Yep.
So if you're financing, if you're using financing, so get yourself pre-approved.
Yep.
One of the biggest pitfalls that I see as well is you don't stop there when you go to get approved, because then you're going to go to Zillow and you're going to start looking for houses and helping your agent find these houses, right? This is great that you are that involved in the buying experience, that you understand that a loan requires you to pay principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and sometimes mortgage insurance. Okay. But let's just keep the four basic ones: principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So when they give you a pre-approval, they say, okay, so this is your monthly payment based on 350,000. Let's just use an arbitrary number.
Yep.
What the lender doesn't tell you right out of the gate is, how did you determine taxes? What number are you using? How did you determine homeowners insurance? What if the property is in a flood zone and it requires another $900 to the estimate? What does that do to my total borrowing power?
Yeah.
So you have to go that step further and then communicate with your agent and have the agent an agent that knows what they're talking about, not take your letter at face value, and talk to your lender at the same time and say, hey, put them together and have conversations to help me, right?
Yep. Yep.
So if that conversation typically says, okay, you pre-approved them for this, tell me what estimated taxes you use to get them that monthly payment.
Yep.
Okay, so we use $2,500 in taxes for the year. And then we used general number for taxes that are going to be another $2,500. And that's how we ended up with a monthly payment with principal and interest, because they know what the interest is and they know what the principal is going to be.
Yep.
So taxes and insurance, what numbers did you use? Because, for example, in Cape Coral, there are assessments for utilities. And some of those taxes don't look like $2,500. They look like $6,600.
Yeah.
So even though the price is $350,000, what you're approved for, You have to go back to the taxes because now $350,000 in your loan, because it has higher taxes because you budgeted for $2,500. Now your debt to income ratios change. So now that house, based on the numbers that it brings to your loan, you can only afford 250 or 275. You can afford that house. So don't just get a pre-approval letter. Dig a little deeper, because these estimates that they give you on a letter they have two arbitrary numbers that you have to be in touch. So when we go to shop for houses for you, we're not just shopping for houses, we're looking at the tax consequences and then whether or not it's in the flood zone. Okay. Whether or not it needs a roof, and within that time, within the lifetime of that owner, when was the last time they replaced it?
Right.
And if it's going to fall in your tenure in that house to replace that roof, how can we negotiate that? And how is that going to affect it? So if you are in a home that's 13 years old, 17 years later, you're going to have a door knock from the insurance company saying, hey, you've got to go replace that.
Yeah.
So do you want to engage in that? So
Yeah.
the age of the roof, the condition of the roof, it all factors in when you go to get homeowners insurance, which is a component of your monthly payment. So when they go do a homeowners insurance quote, they're going to ask you, can you provide a 4-point inspection and a wind mitigation? It's an additional cost, but you have to do that to see if the insurance is going to be able to issue you credits to get you a homeowners insurance that's going to be within the budget that your loan officer gave you.
Of course. Yeah. And I think, man, Carlos, I'm glad to have you on because I think there's a lot of valuable nuggets that you just dropped. So I just want to summarize real quick for our audience. So Carlos was basically saying pre-qualification versus pre-approval, right? You want your lender to do the strongest type of pre-approval they can, which is what Carlos was describing. You underwrite, which we won't get into that, but it basically pre-underwritten, they pulled your credit. They've looked at some pay stubs. They looked at your taxes, depending on what your form of income is. They looked at your debts. They looked at your student loans, right? They're not just like looking on your phone on Credit Karma and taking your word for your income. And that's how they base a pre-qualification. No, they basically ran you through the gauntlet. And that is going to make things a lot easier and a lot more efficient when you actually go to put an offer on a home. Some time spent on the front end is going to save you some time on the back end. So I love that advice. Great advice. And then
from an agent perspective, there's a lot of agents within our marketplace. It seems like everyone has a real estate license, but no one really takes the time to understand some of these factors. And within our real estate community, once you do enough deals, you start doing business with some people over and over again because they stick. More people want to do business with them. More people want to do business with you. Right. So when your pre-approval comes in to this person who you've done business with in the past, and they have a cash deal in front of them as well, they're going to compare your pre-approval and your relationship as an agent and you've been doing business before, and they're going to look at you close to a cash offer. Yeah. Because you put your buyers through not just a pre-approval, but you get them in a position to where 14 days into the transaction, you're not going to back out because of finance. You've got your ducks in a row and you've crossed every T and dotted every I to make sure that's not an issue, that you can just stay focused on the condition of the home moving forward.
Yeah. And one thing I want to highlight also at this point, so I feel like a lot of buyers, and that's our job, right? Like that, it's okay that they do that. But I feel like a lot of buyers, they see a home on Zillow or they see a home, right? That's usually where it starts. It doesn't start with the pre-approval. It usually doesn't start with finding an agent. Sometimes it does, but usually it starts with, we found a nice home on Zillow, right? And then people will call an agent or their agent and say, hey, I want to see this home this weekend. And I just want to highlight that a good agent will first ask you for a pre-approval. So what I just want to make sure or clear to our buyer audience is that is the sign of a good agent. That is a sign of an agent knowing the process, knowing their job, knowing the ins and outs of the real estate market. So don't take it as a negative when you call an agent or your agent and the first thing they ask you is, have you been pre-approved yet? Right? Don't take that as negative. Take that as a sign you should be working with that guy or girl. The agent that without anything basically puts you in their car, and it's a waste for everybody. There's so many things nowadays, luckily, after 0809, there's so many things nowadays that determine if you're approved or not approved for a mortgage. It's not a car dealership where like you go in and you're gonna walk out with a car if you want it. Just depends on the rate, but that's not how it is anymore. So things that you might not think are a problem can easily be a problem to an underwriter. So I just want to make clear, like, a sign of a good agent is, have you been pre-approved? If not, let's first get you to one of my preferred lenders. We'll get it done. Then we know what we're looking at, and then we'll go out and take a look at some homes. So I just want to
Yeah, and that it's a tough question to ask somebody out of the gate, especially if you're sparking a relationship out of thin air. I can see in an experienced home buyer how that would be a problem for someone to just immediately out of the gate say, do you have money to buy a house?
Yeah, and sorry, let me clarify. I don't mean like literally first question, but
Yeah,
I
and completely understand
that I do
Yeah.
believe that it should be a question that a realtor should ask when you're having an initial conversation. Don't open with it, but somewhere in there,
Yeah.
I think it should be asked.
Yeah, I think it's a responsibility owed to the consumer there, and I know that's where you were coming from, but a buyer out there should, regardless of when that question comes, they really need to have a little faith in that. You really have to know how much money you're working with. You have to have the understanding that when you go to buy a house and you need financing, that the bank's going to want to know you could probably afford it based on this income, but if you have this much debt, then where within your debt and your income are you going to have some room to pay me back?
Yeah.
Because they want to lend you money. They just want to make sure that you can pay them back, and that if you don't, that the house is worth, what you're asking to borrow. And that's why they do an appraisal. So
100%.
all of these factors you can get prepared for, so that when you're shopping for your home, you're not distracted by, the ins and outs and the idiosyncrasies of a loan.
Yeah.
Already got that out of the way. You've got your hypothetical stash of money in your hand with a letter of approval, and you can just go shopping without any other distractions. All you have to focus on is, all right, I know that I need to have a home in this area because it's not in a flood zone. I can't afford an additional dollar for flood insurance to stay within my budget of a home. So that's why the agent is asking. They're not asking so that they don't go out and waste their time on you, but to help your buying experience be more efficient, so that you're more prepared when you go to make an offer. It'll give you a lot more confidence in what you're looking at, and it'll narrow it down. It'll narrow it down from the windows that you've been looking at in Zillow from 100 and from 200 to 500. Now you can narrow it down between. Well, what if your bank tells you, listen, you can afford, and this is your monthly payment, and you can be shopping between 500 and 600.
Yeah, or what if your bank tells you you're approved for 500, but you don't like the monthly payment on 500 with a 7% rate? You might not want to go up to 500.
You might not want it, or you might be able to afford it, but you won't know either way until you go through that exercise. And the exercise is absolutely painless. Sure, you have to go get your W-2s or 1099s straightened out, but once you have that conversation, you can intelligently and with confidence go look for your home.
Yeah. And one thing you also mentioned, which I thought was important to highlight as well, I think it's important to know that a $350,000 home in Naples on a monthly basis is not going to cost you the same as a $350,000 home in Lehigh. You're talking insurance, you're talking taxes, you're talking assessments, talking all those things. Same thing with new versus old. A $350,000 new construction home is not going to cost you the same as a $350,000 home that's 20 years old. You're going to be talking anywhere from probably a couple $100 in difference in homeowners insurance, right? Because it's going to cost the insurance company more money to insure a home that is not, I don't want to say up to code, but as up to code, right? With a little bit of an older roof. The windows might not be impact, just home, the building industry constantly evolves. There's constantly code changes, improvements, things like that. So that was really a good thing I thought you mentioned as well with those differences. So moral of the story, get an agent that knows all the different areas and they can highlight the positives and the ins and outs and the negatives of every area. And one thing I also wanted to ask you, so when I go on listing appointments or maybe some seller clients that they had their home on the market listed with a previous agent and their listing expired, one thing I get asked quite often is, what are you going to be doing differently to sell and market my home? So, I mean, Carlos, can you kind of share some effective ways to market a property to attract potential buyers, and also maybe shed some light on what can the seller do on their end to make it easier for an agent or make it more effective to get their home sold quicker for more money?
Sure. It's funny, you go on appointments where other agents have failed to sell their homes, and you can easily find some of the holes in right within the listing of where they fell short. It could just be price, because I think that a seller in the end has to have the confidence that price is the only issue when it comes to selling their home. And the only way to develop that is if the person that they hired makes them feel or makes them see that they did everything under the sun to get their home exposed to bona fide buyers in the real estate industry.
Right.
So there are certain things that agents do creatively. For example, when I first started back in 2008, having marketing by the print was something that you did marketing by the print, and it was how many open houses are you going to host, and what are you going to do? Are you going to offer sandwiches and drinks? Are you going to host a happy hour so that people can show up? Those are the things that the activities that made a seller feel like, well, they did everything they could to sell my home. And the market in our real estate industry has changed. How do you drive? And now it's more efficient today. You can get a lot more eyeballs on the home that you're trying to sell than you could before. So even before my time, there used to be a phone book directory where you went and you looked at the homes that were for sale, whether they were for sale, if that month's subscription or that month's edition had active listings, that home's probably sold. So this is before my time. I've seen one of those books. I couldn't believe it. You know? So times have evolved. I think a seller, when they go to interview, because I think that the seller really has to come to terms with two things. If they're going to sell their home, and if they have to, and they have the motivation to do that they're going to do it no matter what, whether they use you, me, or someone else. Then their next step is going to be, all right, so I'm selling my home regardless, whether it's by myself or using an agent. Yeah. It's got to get sold. Okay. Then they have to go chase down the person that they want to handle that for them.
Right.
And then when they find it, they have to feel comfortable and confident that they're going to do everything they can to expose the home to where all the potential buyers are.
Yeah.
And hardly anyone picks up the newspaper today. So we're not placing marketing dollars there because it's not an efficient way to sell your home anymore. So you have to make sure that you hire an agent that has adapted to today's market conditions and how to sell property, that they're running paid ads on Facebook, that they're running paid ads through Google, that they're constantly putting content out there about homes for sale, because they also have to hire an agent that has the machine running already. Okay. A lot of people say, what are you going to do to sell my home? Well, I'm going to plug you into my system, basically. This is between you and I, obviously. You probably understand what that means. To make it more useful for a person listening to this and they're looking to sell their home, that agent has to have the machine running already. They already have to have the digital footprint in place for you to get the most exposure possible. Yeah. So don't hire an agent that just is getting started with that. Yeah. They don't have the digital footprint. They're not doing what you're doing, which is, handling a podcast that drives people here, that drives buyers, that drives sellers. So it gives you a database of people that are interested to consume the product that you're looking to sell. Within there, you get plugged as a seller, you get plugged into a marketing machine that's going to get you the most amount of exposure, and somebody that has the experience in doing that.
Yeah,
So
100%.
we focus a lot on marketing online and doing social media, things that are obviously, as you start to progress in the industry, these are things that are different and they were uncomfortable for agents like myself as the industry started to change.
Right.
But we've been able to adapt, and we have plugged those strategies in to best help our customers so that they can understand they're going to be with an agent that markets online, that does paid ads, that knows exactly how to do that in order to sell a home, and not just an open house offering sandwiches and drinks.
Yeah. And
To looky-loos that have not been pre-qualified by a bank,
yeah,
and putting your home out there for the public to troop through. Not only is it a safety issue, but it's also the most inefficient way to get your home sold.
yeah. And I love a couple things you just mentioned. So yeah, number one, the National Association of Realtors, every year they come out with a buyer and seller report. It's like a buyer and seller profile. And last year, it's actually part of my listing presentation. Over 90% of buyers found their home in one of three ways. Number one is the internet, right? So you hit the nail on the head, right? Number two is an agent. And number is friends, family, and neighbors. Basically, a friend at work told them, hey, my house on my street is for sale, right? And that's kind of how they find it. And then everything else, like 10% or less, is newspapers, open houses, yard signs. I mean, I still do yard signs because it's pretty cost effective, right? It doesn't cost a lot. Yard signs, like all the print media that you were mentioning.
Yeah,
So
you have to put a for sale sign in your home. That's the standard practice, and you get calls from your
yeah,
signs, not directly to your home. They don't usually call that sign to buy your home. They're just looking for some information, and then
yeah,
they end up buying something in a different budget
yeah,
because they finally got pre-qualified.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, so yeah, but a yard sign is the first thing you do. It's important. I think your neighbors need to understand, because your neighbors are like-minded people, as they are affording the same home as you are. And if they have a cousin or a nephew or a sister that might be able to buy your home, they're also like-minded people. They're going to know the price of their own general area. And if they happen to come with someone, your neighbors are your biggest advocates.
yeah.
So
And
you have to
like,
put a sign in the yard. Those
yeah,
those things are pretty standard. There are some standardized things that you do, but the point is that sellers have to really feel comfortable that the agent that they hire is going to do everything they can to get their home out on the market,
yeah,
and that the value of the home, that price is going to be the only issue if your home hasn't sold,
yeah,
because you've done everything you can. So when the agent comes to you and says, man, we have done all the marketing. These are all the views. These are all the showings.
yeah,
And these people who actually looked at your home decided to buy something else in spite of yours being available.
yeah,
And they bought for this price.
yeah,
So don't just settle on getting a feedback as an agent. You got to have an agent that'll say, okay, you looked at the house. Well, what else did they buy?
yeah.
In spite of yours being available, you need to have that type of feedback and that type of conversation with your agent.
Right.
Someone that's going to provide all those things for you as a seller, so that you can feel comfortable and confident that it's only the price that's the issue at that time. You
Yeah.
know, so those are the things that I think sellers should do,
Yeah.
when they hire an agent.
Right. And so you've been doing this for a long time, right? And you've started when, I guess, have gone through the digitalization of our industry, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Would you agree? Because I always tell people, and this is kind of what you're saying, right? I always tell my seller clients, the best marketing in the world will not sell an overpriced home. Would you agree with me that over the last 15 years, price has become more important than it was, let's say, 20 years ago? Because I feel like 20 years ago, it was more like you knew a broker that knew a broker, and that's how you did the marketing. Nowadays, like every person that is in the market for a new home in the United States can see pretty much every listing in all of the United States on Zillow, right? So
Absolutely.
I feel like price over the last 15 to 20 years has become even more important, because if your home is overpriced, people won't even look at it, right? Because they have 200 homes just like bam, 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 like You need to catch their eye with price. They need to click on your listing and go from there. Would you agree with that? Or what are your thoughts on that, how the industry's evolved?
To me, price is the only issue.
Right.
Price is the only issue. We have had listings that were human that I know that I've had this experience when, we hired our a virtual assistant a while back. This is a couple of years ago. The market was just on fire. And that virtual assistant made a mistake when she inputted the listing without pictures. Like, whoa, first day on the market, huge mistake.
Yeah.
You don't, at least to my standards, you don't just post anything like that.
Yeah.
And it barely got on the market without pictures. Everything else was fine. And instantly, we received 2 showing requests. And within 2 days after that, within a day, because that was corrected pretty quickly, we had 3 or 4 offers.
Wow. Great story. Yeah.
So, and this home was priced aggressively. This seller absolutely had to get off the market. They needed to move because of a job they got in Utah.
Right.
And they they did not want to waste any time. They asked me, man, what is the price that will cause in the home to sell tomorrow? I need to get out. And so we have to take the responsibility there to not underprice it, but just be just right in the market where we were in time, and no pictures, nothing, barely any marketing, and it sold in 2 days.
The price was right. Great.
Because
great
the price was right. Without pictures, without any marketing, without nothing.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Great. Love that.
And that, that's what should happen. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's an extreme example of how price makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And an interesting thing I think you mentioned was with, we don't want to, as an agent, it's our job not to underprice on home. And because that's, I feel like what every seller is always scared of. What I always like to tell, especially in this market right now, what I always like to tell my clients that are selling their home is you can always say no to an offer. You're in a better situation turning down 3 offers you don't like than being in a situation, especially in this market, where we go 5 weeks without any showings and any offers. But that was an interesting thing I think you mentioned and just great analogy, great example with price is a big thing. As the industry has digitalized, it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing, right?
Well, and it's just like you said, information is so readily available that the consumer, in essence, has just by default going to become more intelligent. From the phone book era till today, they have information readily available to truly understand what a good deal looks like as a buyer.
Yeah.
And that's our job as a buyer's agent, is to help them get acclimated with that, what a good deal looks like, or at least help them before they or expedite that process. Because if they spend long enough on Zillow or any of these platforms, they're going to understand what a good deal looks like. What prices are. Oh man, this home was listed for $350,000 and it sold in like a day. It was available this afternoon and it's gone this evening. Wow. So 350 is kind of the sweet spot for that. And we're going to look at multiple offers and we find a home at that price.
Yeah, and that's where we come in and do a solid CMA and things like that. And then
Sure.
One thing on the price or exposure, so I think to kind of sum it up, what are effective ways to market and what should seller be looking at? So it sounds like, number one would be like the right price, right? I'm not saying low price, I'm not saying under market value, I'm saying the right price for that market at that time. Number 2 is, online exposure, online marketing, yard signs, and then just really partnering with an agent that has a network. And like you said earlier, you do business with other agents more often. You develop a relationship and you can say, hey, we should take this offer maybe from this agent because I've worked with him in the past and I know this pre-approval is solid. So just, pick an agent with a network. And then one thing, what is personally my biggest pet peeve, and you would probably agree with this, you have to have professional photography in this day and age.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I can't tell you enough. When
it is my biggest, oh my God.
When we were talking to that, when you could find some of the holes that agents do.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I said. You have to feel absolutely confident that the agent is doing everything they can. And one of those things is pictures.
Yeah.
Yes, they're doing everything online. Are the pictures The photographer provide them with a web page that they can market with, that they can that the seller can send to all their friends.
Yeah.
And that digital experience where the homeowner can receive a package of their pictures that they can just spend with your information on it.
Yeah.
So that you can go find a buyer for their home. These are little things that the seller can say, man, they did everything they're supposed to do, maybe a little bit more to sell my house. They're coming back to me with stats, with feedback, with everything. And they're saying, man, they're buying other homes in spite of yours being available.
Yeah.
Because of this. And this is where the market is shifting. So they have to have solid conversations with the agent where the agent provides all the stats and the reasons why price is the only issue. On top of that, they're seeing how the marketing is taking place.
Yeah.
A seller truly needs to come to terms with a number that on their home, they need to go through this exercise, in my opinion. What price how low are they willing to go before they change their plans completely about selling their home? What does that number look like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Have that in hold those cards. If you're working with the right agent, you can tell them that. But if you want to keep those cards to yourself, you can, but have that conversation with yourself as a seller. What price? What is the price that I will absolutely not go below?
Right.
And before I do that, I'll just change my plans of selling, stay right here. I won't go to that new job. I'm staying right here. I'm just not selling below that price.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you need to have that number within you and see where that sits with your bottom line. When you hire an agent, make sure that they bring the cost. They want to know how fast and what you're going to do for your home and what's it going to cost you, right? 6% commission, standardized transaction fee, and then broken down fees for settlement.
Yeah. And with the pictures, just for some advice for our sellers listening, our homeowners listening, I think everybody can relate to this. Or let me back up for a second. It just goes back to, in a sea of homes, in a magnitude of homes on Zillow, the goal is to attract attention to your specific home. And I think initially pictures are even more important than the price, just for someone to click. I think we've all been there. We're on Zillow and we see like this home with this nice picture and it's way out of our price range, right? Like we have no business looking at this home, but we click on it just because the picture's nice and we're like, man, this is a nice home, right?
Yeah, and ask your agent. Is there some times where you're going to be, you watch HGTV long enough, you're going to become an agent, right? Ask your agent for the professional opinion on how, when they go out to digitally market your home, so how are you going to present these pictures? Mr. Seller, you're going to find some awkward things in your listing. And one of them is going to be the first picture of your listing is not going to be the front of your house.
Yeah.
We're in Florida. People want to buy a home. They want to get the Florida experience. And the one picture that gets the most amount of hits when we do marketing is going to be two of them. One, an excellent picture of your chef's kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's got a chef's kitchen with all the bells and whistles in it, or a picture of your pool.
Yep,
100%. In
100%.
the outdoor area. That's the one when you go back in your marketing, and because we have the ability to do that through the clicks and what pictures they click the most on, right?
Yeah.
And you find that the pictures with pools and the pictures with kitchens are the ones that got the most amount of hits. So we're not doing this just to please you. We're doing this because this is what marketing does. Okay. And when you go out there, what's going to get somebody to click and stop?
Yeah.
And look down at what the price is going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's the second thing they see.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. And where is the property at? So these are little things that a seller just has to find an agent that they can have confidence in that they're going to do everything that they can to sell their home, expose their home the right way. And those little details, when you understand marketing on social media, on Instagram, they can include you on some of these marketing efforts so that you can see when posts are going out. What are they doing with, we have a wonderful tool within our MLS it's called reverse prospecting.
Yeah.
That's when an agent comes in They have a buyer and they said, "Oh man, I'd like a house in this criteria. Can you start sending me homes in this criteria?" They set up the criteria and they have an automatic email going out to that customer.
Yeah.
Okay. So if that customer receives your house within that criteria, they are going to favor it or put a little heart on it. And we're going to find out what agent has that customer within that database.
Yeah.
Okay, so knowing how to copy paste and understand how to get that list of agents that have customers within their database that they're not paying attention to yet. Hey, do you have a customer that liked our home within the search that you sent?
Right.
What do you think? Is that buyer local? When can you schedule an appointment to come see the house?
Yeah.
All this stuff comes with experience. So the seller has to have absolute confidence, and the agent needs to come in prepared to present that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So that going down the line, when your home is not selling, and this will happen in this age, in this market today, where the home just sits a little longer than it used to, than it did a couple of years ago. You're going to, as an agent, you're going to have to be prepared to say, "Hey man, we've done this much to sell your home. This is the activity we've created. Price is the only issue."
Yeah.
And this is why price is the only issue, and show it. And the seller has to have that relationship with their professional.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate or clarify, I think what Carlos means with price is the only issue. I think what the meaning behind that is if you work with an agent like, Carlos, price is the only issue if all the other bases are covered.
100%.
If the pictures are perfect, if the online marketing is there, if the yard sign's there, if the reverse prospecting and the networking has been done. If all that has been done, you can confidently go to your seller, or you as a seller will confidently know
that price is the only issue.
That's what Carlos means.
100%.
It doesn't mean you should go into a listing appointment or talk to a seller and just be like, "Hey, it doesn't matter what we list your price at. Let's just lowball it and we'll figure it out." Right? That's not.
Yeah, no, don't be the seller that, that says, "Okay, so price is the only issue." Then you don't have to put any nice pictures on it,
Right.
or take pictures at all.
It doesn't matter with what agent I go with, right?
No, you have to be able to check. And I'm talking about the experience that you have with an agent when you hired him.
Yeah.
And they said they were going to do all these things. So you can see that they did them. So you're left with, man, we have done everything. My agent is great. The market's just getting soft, or the market is heading in a different direction. And he has shown me how that's happened.
Yeah.
But price has become in it. Price is the only issue.
Yeah, 100%. So
thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't.
Yeah, I know that's what you meant. It's just like people that do this every day. So I just want to make sure our audience knows that. But man, Carlos, I think thank you so much for coming on the show. Clearly, you're very knowledgeable, you're very experienced, and I hope for everybody listening, there was some good nuggets in there for home buyers, prospective home buyers, homeowners, prospective home sellers. So I just want to thank you.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And lastly, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch, Carlos?
So call me old school, but they can literally call me. Okay. They can call me or shoot me a text message at 239-898-6892. I answer all my calls. I'm maniacal about that, regardless of who's calling. I even answer my spam calls. It's just a habit. And my customers know that they can reach me at any time.
Right. And
so just give me a quick call or shoot me a text message if you're interested in doing anything within the area in terms of selling or buying a home.
Awesome. And you're with Coldwell Banker, right?
Coldwell Banker, yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Carlos, thank you so much, and I hope everybody took away as much as I did. Thank you.
My pleasure, man.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I hope you enjoyed our discussions and gained valuable knowledge to enhance your home ownership journey here in Southwest Florida. A big thank you to our incredible guests and of course to you, our listeners, for joining us. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you'd like to connect, feel free to reach out. You can find us on Instagram at @KevinTremmel_real estate, on Facebook at Kevin Tremmel Real Estate, or visit our website, kevintremmel.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Your feedback is crucial and we're always eager to hear from you. Until next time, this is Kevin Tremmel, your host, signing off. See you on the next episode.